Racist security humiliates black girl at airport, but when she discovered her true identity, she was shocked. Amara Johnson, a 16-year-old girl, was about to experience one of the most humiliating situations of her life. Returning home after a school conference on youth leadership and civil rights, she could hardly imagine that recognition for her excellent academic performance would lead her to such a degrading encounter. The daughter of Sarah Johnson, a renowned lawyer and civil rights activist, Amara dreamed of following in her mother's footsteps, advocating for minority causes. However, what should have been a smooth trip would turn into a test of resilience and dignity. At Hartsfield-Jackson Atlanta International Airport, the long lines and crowded corridors created an atmosphere of anxiety. Amara, with her voluminous curly hair and tired expression, was heading to the metal detector when Rebecca McCoy, a skeptical and resentful security agent, observed her. Without any concrete basis, Rebecca decided that Amara needed to be searched, ignoring the fact that she posed no threat. During the search, Rebecca made insinuating and derogatory comments, treating the young girl in a hostile manner. Amara, despite her upbringing and desire to remain calm, felt the weight of discrimination and humiliation. With her heart racing, Amara could no longer contain her indignation and mentioned her mother's name, hoping it could change the situation. However, Rebecca ignored the comment and continued with the humiliating search. Meanwhile, outside, Sarah, who was anxiously waiting for her daughter, began to worry about the delay. Realizing what was happening, the lawyer decided to intervene, not imagining that this moment would become a turning point, not just for Amara, but also for Rebecca herself. When Sarah entered the search room, the atmosphere changed immediately. With the presence of a leader, she confronted Rebecca authoritatively, revealing her identity and her fight against discrimination. Other passengers who had begun recording the scene became witnesses to a confrontation that exposed the reality of structural racism. Sarah did not hesitate to loudly argue about the injustices people face every day, while Rebecca began to understand the gravity of her actions. The consequences of this confrontation did not take long to arrive. Rebecca was called to a meeting where her actions were confronted and questioned. Sarah, with her resolute and diplomatic stance, turned the situation into a public lesson against discrimination, determined to bring the case to the media and civil rights authorities. The humiliation Amara faced became a national debate, and while her mother sought justice, the young girl understood the importance of Sarah's fight. Inspired, Amara felt motivated to defend the values of equality and respect, determined to make a difference in the world. This story is a powerful reminder that even in the face of adversity and discrimination, courage and determination can transform painful experiences into opportunities for growth and change. As Amara and Sarah face the challenges that arise, the strength of their voices resonates, inspiring others to join the fight for a fairer world. Amara Johnson felt her heart race as she tried to process the humiliation she had just experienced. Next to her mother, Sarah, as they walked through the airport, the young girl reflected on the cruel words of the security agent. The feeling of injustice mixed with anger and confusion. How could someone be treated that way in a place that was supposed to be safe? These questions echoed in her mind, challenging the strength she had always believed she possessed. Sarah, noticing her daughter's internal struggle, decided it was time to act. She not only wanted justice for Amara, but also wanted to show her that the fight against discrimination was not just theoretical. It was a real and ongoing battle. As they walked toward the airport exit, Sarah suggested that Amara share her experience on social media so that other young people could understand the importance of fighting against discrimination. Amara hesitated. The fear of retaliation and insecurity began to undermine her confidence. However, seeing her mother's determined expression, a new spark of courage began to ignite in her heart. Sarah had always been a source of inspiration, and now more than ever, Amara wanted to follow in her footsteps. What was just a negative experience could be transformed into an opportunity for learning and activism. So, taking a deep breath, Amara decided that she would not let this go unnoticed. Meanwhile, Agent Rebecca McCoy faced her own consequences. After the confrontation with Sarah, she found herself in an uncomfortable situation. The pressure and stigma of her actions followed her. Rebecca was not a bad person, but her beliefs and prejudices led her to act cruelly. When her superiors summoned her to discuss the incident, fear began to settle in her heart. She knew her actions could result in termination or, at the very least, a severe reprimand. In the days that followed, Rebecca began to reflect on what she had done. She lived in a bubble of biases that she had never questioned. The image of young Amara, with her eyes full of indignation, would not leave her mind. In a moment of vulnerability, she realized that she had hurt someone who just wanted to go home. This self-reflection led her to seek the truth about her own prejudices, a path that would require courage and vulnerability. Meanwhile, Amara struggled to stay strong. Her mother's support was invaluable, but the young girl still faced pressure from her school environment. Some friends supported her, while others, fearing the repercussions, distanced themselves. This experience became a test of their relationships. The friendship that Amara had with Clara, a classmate, began to deepen, but challenges also arose. Clara was a young woman who always stood up against injustices, but social pressure made her hesitate to speak out publicly. The fear of retaliation or being misunderstood weighed on her decisions. One night, while they were studying together, Amara shared her insecurities with Clara. She talked about how she felt torn between wanting to fight and the fear of exposing herself. Clara, listening attentively, reflected on her own internal struggle. She had also faced moments of discrimination, but had never had the courage to take a stand. The two young women found themselves in a space of vulnerability, where friendship and mutual understanding began to flourish. They decided that together they could give voice to this struggle, even if it meant facing challenges. Over time, Amara's story began to gain notoriety on social media. Each post and each share brought her closer to a wider audience. The reactions were mixed. Some people supported her courage, while others attacked her. This emotional polarization became increasingly difficult to handle. Amara found herself in a cycle of emotions, questioning her inner strength. She wondered if she was ready for what was to come. Each new message, both supportive and critical, tested her determination. The pressure began to affect her mental health. Amara felt overwhelmed and at times wished she could give up. However, in a moment of introspection, she remembered her mother's words. "The struggle is long, but every step counts." This reflection made her realize that giving up was not an option. The pain she had felt in those moments of discrimination could be transformed into a powerful force, a fuel for the change she so desired. However, this journey was not just about Amara. Other characters began to form around her. The school principal, Mr. Thompson, a respected man, started to observe the situation closely. He had always been an advocate for inclusion, but now he found himself challenged to take a stand. He knew that as a leader, he had the responsibility to create a safe space for all students. The conflict was intensifying, and at the same time, the possibility of unity and change was becoming more real. Thus, Amara's struggle and her family's became a larger story, where prejudices, challenges, and overcoming intertwined. Each obstacle that arose was not just a barrier, but an opportunity for learning and growth. The growing emotional tension challenged Amara to confront her fears, while new friendships and alliances formed, paving the way for a broader and more meaningful struggle. Amara felt increasingly overwhelmed. As her story spread on social media, the pressure mounted. Each notification on her phone seemed to bring a new weight, as if the world were watching her every move. She struggled to stay steady, but the line between courage and vulnerability became increasingly thin. At school, her peers began to look at her differently, some with admiration, others with disdain. This made her anxious, and the idea of attending classes became a daily challenge. Messages of support continued to come in, but so did criticisms. Some people called her dramatic, saying she was just seeking attention. That hurt her deeply. How could someone minimize her pain? Amara felt lost, questioning whether she should have spoken out or if she should have remained silent. Deep down, the young woman knew that the struggle was for something greater, but daily reality confronted her with a distressing doubt. Was she really ready for this battle? Clara, her closest friend, tried to be a support, but as the weight of the situation grew, Clara became more hesitant. She too felt the pressure from the school and classmates, and often found herself torn between supporting Amara and protecting herself. During lunch one day, Clara asked a question that left Amara confused. "Do you think all this stress is worth it?" That phrase echoed in Amara's mind. She wondered if she was being selfish for insisting on her fight. It was a moment of reflection and pain, and their friendship began to show cracks. Sarah, noticing the change in her daughter's behavior, tried to intervene. She suggested that the two do a presentation at school about discrimination and the importance of empathy. Amara hesitated, The idea of speaking in front of many people made her nervous, but at the same time it could be an opportunity for transformation. She felt she needed to do something, not just for herself, but for everyone who had faced discrimination. However, anxiety began to take hold of her again. The fear of failure consumed her. One night, Amara decided to try to prepare herself. She sat at the table, surrounded by papers and pens, trying to organize her thoughts. But the pressure made her feel suffocated. With each attempt to write, what was supposed to be a message of hope turned into a sea of doubts. What if people don't care? What if I can't convey what I want to say? These questions tormented her. It was an internal battle that left her exhausted, both emotionally and physically. Meanwhile, Mr. Thompson, the school principal, was observing the situation with increasing concern. He knew it was time to act, but he also felt the weight of the challenges. Some parents of students were worried about the repercussions of Amara's support. He found himself in a difficult position, caught between defending what was right and maintaining peace at school. In a meeting with other teachers, he expressed his concern. We need to create a safe space. We cannot ignore this situation. But not everyone agreed. There were opposing voices, and that left him frustrated. The atmosphere at school was tense. Amara's situation was becoming a topic of debate among students, teachers, and parents. Reactions were polarized, and that increased the pressure on her. Amara began to feel that her struggle was not just personal, but an issue that involved everyone around her. This recognition brought a new wave of responsibility, but also a deep fear. She questioned whether she was really ready to be the spokesperson for something so important. A week before the presentation, an unexpected event occurred. A group of students organized a protest against discrimination, but in a way that Amara did not expect. They used sarcastic posters and mocked the situation. That left her devastated. How could they turn this into a joke? Amara felt betrayed and helpless. What should have been a moment of solidarity was turning into a nightmare. That day, the young girl went home in tears, questioning whether it was still worth fighting. However, when she got home, Sarah welcomed her with a tight hug. "The fight is hard, my dear, but you are not alone," she said, sensing her daughter's fragility. Amara felt she needed to share her fears with Clara, but their friendship was in a delicate phase. Clara was becoming increasingly distant, and the social pressure weighed heavily on her. The fear of speaking out publicly turned her into a shadow of what she once was. The challenge that Amara faced became more than just a test of courage. It was a reflection of her internal struggles. With each step, she found herself confronting not only external prejudice, but also her own insecurities. Emotions overwhelmed her, and the fight for justice became a roller coaster of highs and lows. And so Amara's journey continued, full of uncertainties, but also with a deep desire for change and justice. Amara sat in her room, the heavy silence around her. The glow of her phone, which once connected her to the world, now felt like a constant reminder of her struggle. The supportive messages were like a temporary balm, but the criticisms and mockeries left her shattered. That night, while looking out the window, a disturbing thought invaded her. What if all of this wasn't worth it? It was a question that haunted her, but one she had never dared to confront. The next morning, Amara woke up with a sense of restlessness. The day of the presentation was approaching, and the anticipation made her nervous. Clara had not responded to her messages in recent days, and the distance between them was palpable. Amara wondered if her friends still believed in the cause they were defending. As she prepared for school, a new unexpected event made her hesitate. A video circulated on social media, showing a group of students making jokes about the discrimination she was facing. The laughter echoed in her mind, like a cruel echo that wouldn't let her be at peace. Upon arriving at school, Amara noticed that the atmosphere was different. The looks were mixed. Some were supportive, but many were mocking. The young girl felt her heart tighten. During recess, Amara found a group of classmates gathered around a cell phone, laughing and pointing. What she saw made her stop in her tracks. It was a montage of her, with distorted phrases being called the drama queen. Their laughter cut like a knife, and she felt tears burn her eyes. The desire to hide took over her. How could they do this, she wondered, the weight of betrayal crushing her. It was at that moment that a student named Lucas, who had been unnoticed until then, approached. He was known for being quiet and reserved, but now, with a serious look, he addressed his peers. "This isn't funny. She's going through something serious." Lucas's words were a breath of fresh air amid the chaos. Amara felt a wave of gratitude, but the pain still dominated her. Why would he care, she thought, feeling confused. As the days passed, the situation only seemed to worsen. The presentation was approaching, but the idea of exposing herself in front of everyone terrified her. Amara began to think that maybe she was making a mistake. What did she really want? To fight for a better world, or to protect herself? What if her voice wasn't heard? These questions haunted her, creating a storm of uncertainties. In a moment of desperation, Amara decided to meet with Clara. They met at a cafe, and the tension was palpable. Clara seemed hesitant, and Amara felt that their friendship was on the brink of collapse. "Are you still with me, Clara?" she asked, her voice trembling. Clara looked into her friend's eyes and, with a heavy sigh, replied, "I want to, but I'm just as scared as you are. Sometimes I wonder if all this stress is worth it." Clara's words hit Amara like lightning. It was the first time she saw her friend's fragility. The struggle wasn't just hers. It was everyone's who felt pressured to choose a side. Amara realized that behind every laugh there was a deep fear. "What if I fail?" Clara continued. "What if people don't understand?" That made Amara reconsider her choices. After that conversation, something inside Amara began to change. She remembered Lucas and his courage. If he could stand up for her, maybe she could stand up for herself too. Doubt still lingered, but now there was a new understanding. What she was experiencing was more than just an act of courage. It was an opportunity to create empathy and show that everyone faced invisible battles. In the days that followed, Amara began to prepare for the presentation, not just with the intention of protesting. She wanted people to see the truth behind her struggles. She started collecting stories from other students who had faced discrimination, revealing that the pain was shared and that the fight was collective. The idea of transforming her pain into a message of hope and unity motivated her to move forward. With each step, Amara felt stronger. She was ready to face her fears, not just for herself, but for everyone who felt their voices were being silenced. The battle was far from over, but the young woman knew that there was now a greater purpose behind what she was doing. The fight for empathy and understanding was not just hers, it was everyone's. And so Amara prepared, not to fight alone, but to lead a movement that could change the heart of her school and, who knows, the world around her. Amara felt a new kind of determination pulsing within her. The conversation with Clara had ignited a flame that seemed to have gone out. She remembered Lucas's words and how he stood up to defend her. That inspired her to be stronger, not just for herself, but for all those who also felt marginalized. With each passing day, she prepared more intensely for the presentation, diving into the stories of her peers who also faced discrimination. It was a task that required not only courage, but also vulnerability. However, with this new determination, new obstacles began to arise. Amara realized that some people, instead of supporting her initiative, were more willing to attack her. In the school hallways, whispers and exchanged glances became more frequent. She felt the weight of criticism with every step she took. Social media, which had once been a space of support, was now filled with mean comments about her decision to expose herself. Who does she think she is? And she just wants attention were some of the messages she saw in the comments. Each one felt like a stab to her already wounded heart. Amara tried to cope with it as best as she could. She remembered the conversations she had with Clara, where they both talked about how empathy could transform hate into understanding. But inside, the young woman felt like a ship adrift in a stormy sea. She began to jot down her feelings in a journal, a safe space where she could express her insecurities without fear of judgment. "I can be strong," she wrote. "I can make a difference. But is it worth it?" These questions followed her, a constant shadow in her mind. One afternoon, while walking through the park near the school, Amara encountered Lucas again. He was sitting on a bench looking up at the sky. Upon seeing her, he smiled and waved. Amara approached, feeling relief at seeing someone who supported her. "Hi, Lucas, how are you?" she asked, trying to hide the emotions that consumed her. Lucas looked at her sincerely. "I'm okay, but I noticed things are tough for you. I wanted to know if I could help in any way." His words touched Amara's heart. She talked about what she was feeling, about the fear of speaking at the presentation and the weight of the criticism. Lucas listened attentively, and in a moment of vulnerability, he shared his own experiences of bullying at school. "Sometimes I wonder if it's worth being myself," he confessed, "but when I see you standing up, it gives me courage. You're not alone, you know." These words echoed in Amara's mind. She realized that it wasn't just her who was fighting. There were others around her who were also facing their own battles. This encouraged her to keep going. That night, after talking with Lucas, Amara decided that she would not let fear paralyze her. She focused on her presentation, organizing the stories she had collected. It was time to show that the struggle was bigger than her individual pain. It was a collective fight. But as the day of the presentation approached, fear began to creep in again. At school, Amara started to notice that some students were banding together against her. Insults and taunts became more frequent. At one point, during recess, a group of students passed by her, making gestures and laughing. The pain she felt was almost physical. Amara wanted to cry, wanted to hide, but she remembered Lucas's words, "You're not alone." That helped her to stay strong. On the day of the presentation, Amara was nervous, but also determined. When she arrived at the auditorium, her heart raced. She saw many familiar faces, but she also saw those who had attacked her. A chill ran down her spine, but she took a deep breath and stepped onto the stage. The spotlight blinded her, but looking out at the audience, she saw Lucas waving encouragingly. This inspired her to continue. Amara began to speak, her hands trembling, but her voice remained steady. She shared her experiences and the stories of her peers, highlighting the importance of empathy and unity. Every word that left her mouth was a step toward healing, not just for her, but for everyone in the room. She saw some hardened faces beginning to soften, and that encouraged her even more. When she finished, the audience was silent for a moment, and then applause began to echo. Amara felt tears streaming down her face, but they were tears of relief and happiness. She had faced her fears and, more importantly, had found her voice. Although new challenges arose every day, she knew she was no longer fighting alone. The journey was just beginning, but she was ready to face it. The fight for empathy and understanding had become a fundamental part of her life, and Amara was determined not to give up. Amara felt a new kind of determination pulsing within her. The conversation with Clara had ignited a flame that seemed to have gone out. She remembered Lucas's words, who always defended her. That inspired her to be stronger, not just for herself, but for everyone who also faced discrimination. With each passing day, she prepared intensely for the presentation, diving into the stories of her classmates who also dealt with prejudice. It was a task that required not only courage, but vulnerability. However, with this new determination, new obstacles arose. Some people, instead of supporting her initiative, were ready to attack her. In the school hallways, whispers and malicious glances became frequent. Amara felt the weight of the criticism with every step. Social media, which had once been a space of support, was now filled with cruel comments about her decision to expose herself. Messages like, "Who does she think she is and she just wants attention," hit her like daggers to her heart. Amara tried to deal with this as best as she could. She recalled the conversations she had with Clara, where they talked about how empathy could transform hate into understanding. However, inside, she felt like a ship adrift in a stormy sea. To find a foundation, she began writing down her feelings in a journal, a safe space where she could express her insecurities without fear of judgment. She wrote, "I can be strong, I can make a difference, but is it worth it?" These questions accompanied her, a constant shadow in her mind. One afternoon, while walking through the park near the school, Amara encountered Lucas again. He was sitting on a bench looking up at the sky. When he saw her, he smiled and waved. Amara approached, feeling relief at seeing someone who supported her. "Hi, Lucas. How are you?" she asked, trying to hide the emotions that consumed her. Lucas looked at her sincerely. "I'm okay, but I noticed that things are tough for you. I wanted to know if I can help in any way." His words touched Amara's heart. She talked about what she felt, about the fear of speaking in the presentation and the weight of the criticism. Lucas listened attentively, and in a moment of vulnerability, shared his own experiences of bullying at school. "Sometimes, I wonder if it's worth being myself," he confessed. "But when I see you standing up, it gives me courage. You're not alone, you know." Those words echoed in Amara's mind. She realized that she was not the only one fighting. There were others around her facing their own battles. This encouraged her to keep going. That night, after talking to Lucas, she decided that she would not let fear paralyze her. She focused on her presentation, organizing the stories she had collected. It was time to show that the struggle was bigger than her individual pain. It was a collective fight. But as the day of the presentation approached, fear began to creep in again. At school, Amara noticed that some students were uniting against her. Insults and provocations became more frequent. At one moment, during recess, a group of students passed by her, making gestures and laughing. The pain she felt was almost physical. She wanted to cry, wanted to hide, but she remembered Lucas's words. "You are not alone." That helped her to stay strong. On the day of the presentation, Amara was nervous but determined. When she arrived at the auditorium, her heart raced. She saw many familiar faces, but also those who had attacked her. A chill ran down her spine, but she took a deep breath and stepped onto the stage. The spotlight blinded her, but looking at the audience, she saw Lucas waving encouragingly. This motivated her to continue. Amara began to speak, her hands trembling, but her voice remained steady. She shared her experiences and her classmates' stories, highlighting the importance of empathy and unity. Each word that left her mouth was a step toward healing, not just for her but for everyone in the room. She saw some hardened faces beginning to soften, and that encouraged her even more. When she finished, the audience was silent for a moment, and then applause began to echo. Amara felt tears streaming down her face, but they were tears of relief and happiness. She had faced her fears and, more importantly, had found a voice. Although new challenges arose every day, she knew she no longer fought alone. The journey was just beginning, but she was ready to face it. The fight for empathy and understanding had become a fundamental part of her life, and Amara was determined not to give up. She had learned that true strength comes from standing up not just for herself, but for all others who need support. Amara was on stage, feeling the weight of expectations and fear. Her classmates' gazes pierced her like arrows. She knew this was the moment she had prepared to face, but anxiety nearly paralyzed her. The auditorium was full, and the murmurs of disdain still echoed in her mind. However, looking at Lucas in the audience, his supportive expression gave her the strength she needed. He was not just there as a friend, he was proof that she was not alone in this fight. She took a deep breath and began to speak. The first sentence came out hesitantly, but soon she found her rhythm. Amara shared her stories, getting emotional as she recounted her classmates' experiences. Each account was a cry for justice, a plea for understanding. She spoke about the prejudice she faced daily, how it affected her deeply, but also about the strength she found in uniting with others. She talked not only about her pains, but also about her victories and the importance of feeling welcomed. When her eyes met those of some students who had attacked her, a wave of insecurity hit her. The fear of being ridiculed again almost made her hesitate, but instead she decided she could not let the past define her. Enough, she thought. I am more than this. And that determination pushed her to continue. The tension in the room was palpable. Amara could feel that many were listening attentively, and some even seemed to be reflecting on her words. She remembered the conversation she had with Clara about empathy and how everyone has their struggles. In that moment, Amara decided that she was not just standing up for herself, she was fighting for everyone who also felt invisible. Her voice grew stronger, clearer, as she spoke about the need for a welcoming and respectful school environment. When she finished speaking, the room fell silent, as if everyone were absorbing what they had just heard. 1 second felt like an eternity until suddenly the applause began. At first, it was timid, but soon turned into a wave of support. Amara felt tears streaming down her face, but they were tears of relief. She had done it. Her courage had touched others. However, not everything would be easy. At the back of the room, a group of students who used to mock her was still there, with closed expressions. One of them, a boy named Andre, stood up and with a loud and challenging voice said, "This changes nothing, Amara. You're still the same as always." The atmosphere in the room changed instantly. The tension rose and Amara's heart raced. She could let herself be discouraged, but instead she decided to face the challenge head-on. With a steady gaze, Amara replied, "Andre, I understand that you may not agree with me, but what I said today is about all of us. It's not just about me. What you do with your words can hurt or help. You don't have to agree with me, but I hope you start to think about how your actions affect others." The silence that followed was profound. Walking across the stage, she continued, "It's not about being perfect or not making mistakes. Everyone has their struggles. We all have the power to change our behaviors. And if you want, I'm here to talk." Amara's words resonated in the room. Some students began to murmur, reflecting on the importance of empathy and change. Andre's previously disdainful look began to show a crack. He seemed confused, as if he were reconsidering his attitudes. Amara didn't know if she would be able to change his mind at that moment, but she knew she had done her part. After the presentation, as the students dispersed, Lucas approached Amara. "You were amazing. I wasn't sure if you could do it, but you faced everyone with such courage." She smiled, feeling lighter than ever. "Thank you, Lucas. I really couldn't have done it without your support." From that day on, Amara realized that the fight against prejudice was a continuous journey. She hadn't solved all the world's problems, but she had planted a seed of change. And more importantly, she had discovered an inner strength she never knew she had. The support of friends, empathy, and solidarity became her most powerful weapons. Amara learned that standing up for herself was important, but standing up for others was even more meaningful. And as she walked alongside Lucas, she felt that together they could make a difference, not only in their lives but in the lives of everyone around them. She was ready to face the upcoming challenges because now she knew that, with courage and unity, it was possible to turn pain into hope. Amara felt a mix of relief and nervousness as the auditorium began to empty. The speech she had given still echoed in her mind, and Andre's words haunted her. Although she had faced the situation firmly, she knew that change would not happen overnight. The reactions of her peers varied, and some seemed contemplative, while others still maintained the same dismissive attitude. As she left the stage, she was surrounded by a few classmates who expressed their support. "Amara, you were so brave. I could never do what you did," one of them said, her eyes shining with admiration. Amara smiled, but a part of her still wondered if she had really made a difference. The words of support were comforting, but the shadow of Andre's disdain and that of others still troubled her. Lucas approached, excited. "Did you see his expression?" It was like he was starting to understand. "Your courage might have changed something." Amara looked at Lucas, thinking about how he always believed in her, even when she doubted herself. "I hope so. But what if he doesn't change? What if nothing changes?" Her voice was heavy with uncertainty. Lucas looked her in the eyes, serious. "Change takes time, Amara. What matters is that you spoke. You did your part. We can't control how others react, but we can inspire them." His words comforted her a bit, but the internal battle was still far from resolved. In the following days, Amara noticed a subtle change in the school environment. Some people who used to ignore her started greeting her. A girl who once avoided her now sat next to her in the cafeteria. Conversations at school began to revolve around what she had said. It was as if a small flame had been lit, and the idea of empathy was beginning to spread. On the other hand, Andre and his friends did not leave her alone so easily. They tried to discredit what she had said, making sarcastic comments on social media. Amara felt her heart tighten as she read the messages. It was hard to ignore the pain that the words caused, but she remembered what Lucas had said. If she could inspire change in at least one person, it would be worth it. One afternoon, while walking down the hallway, Amara spotted Andre standing with a group of friends, laughing at something he had said. Fear of approaching him took over, but remembering her mission, she decided to act. With a hesitant step, she walked up to him. "Andre, can you talk to me?" His surprise was evident, but he nodded. "What do you want to talk about?" he asked, with a disdainful tone that made her hesitate. But Amara took a deep breath and continued. "I just wanted to understand why you still talk like that. I'm not here to fight, but to talk. You have your reasons for acting this way, and I would like to know more about it." The conversation was not easy. Andre started to defend himself, saying he was just having fun. But as Amara spoke about her experiences, her struggles, and how words could hurt, she noticed a change in his expression. He seemed to be listening, really listening. "I didn't know you felt that way," he finally admitted, his voice quieter. "I just thought it was funny." Amara smiled, realizing that he was learning too. It was a small step, but a step worth taking. Weeks went by, and Amara began to realize that she was not alone in this struggle. Other students started to join together, forming a group that promoted dialogues about empathy and respect. The school began to transform into a place where voices that had once been silenced could be heard. Amara noticed that her courage had created a domino effect. Not just her, but many others were feeling safer to express themselves. What had once seemed impossible was now coming true. They were creating a more welcoming environment. As she watched all of this unfold, Amara reflected on her journey. She had come out of her shell and faced her fears. The fight against prejudice was not just an individual battle, but a cause that united everyone. And alongside Lucas and new friends, she felt she could face any challenge that might arise. The path would still have obstacles, but now she was ready to confront them, not just for herself, but for all those who needed a voice. Amara watched the transformation around her with a mix of joy and disbelief. The school, once marked by silence and fear, now pulsed with new voices, with dialogues that had once seemed impossible. The courage she had found to speak about her experiences had spread, awakening empathy and unity among the students. Andre, who had once been just a symbol of disdain, was now becoming an example of change. He had begun to reach out, participating in conversations and even defending the cause at crucial moments. As Amara reflected on her journey, she realized it was not just about overcoming prejudice, but about understanding that everyone was in a constant state of evolution. What had started as an act of courage to express her truths had transformed into a larger movement, where friendship and understanding surpassed grudges and disagreements. However, the echo of Andre's words still resonated in her mind. The past could not be erased, and the wound he had caused would not easily disappear. Amara decided that to move forward, she needed to confront this wound more directly. With the support of the group that had formed, she decided to organize an open debate, where not only her experiences would be shared, but also those of Andre and others who had, in some way, contributed to the pain she felt. The day of the debate arrived. The auditorium was full, and the students sat in an atmosphere of anticipation. Amara, nervous, began to talk about her journey and how words can hurt, but also heal. When Andre had the chance to speak, he spoke sincerely. He acknowledged his mistakes and apologized to Amara and everyone he had hurt. The audience fell silent, but a sense of relief and hope began to hang in the air. From that day on, Andre's and Amara's words became a symbol of the power of personal transformation. Amara realized that behind the anger and disdain, there was a possibility for reconciliation. True revenge was not to get back at those who had hurt her, but to show that change was possible. By helping Andre understand the impact of his actions, Amara had not only freed herself from her pain, but also given him a chance to redeem himself. As the months passed, the school became a more welcoming and respectful space. Students who had once felt alone now found support in each other. Amara and Andre became friends, an example of how friendship can overcome misunderstandings. Amara's journey became a story of overcoming, learning, and transformation, not just for her, but for everyone around her. Amara realized that true wealth lay in the connections she had made and the lessons she had learned. Success was not just about being heard, but also about listening. She had learned that sometimes the greatest act of courage is to open up to dialogue and empathy. At the end of her journey, Amara looked back and smiled. She had become a leader, not by choice, but because her voice had inspired others to speak out as well. Her act of vulnerability had created a ripple effect, and she felt grateful for every step of that journey. Now it's your turn to act. Think about your own experiences and how your words can impact someone's life. Share your stories and reflections in the comments. Remember, every interaction here is a step toward creating more content that can inspire and transform. Together, we can make a difference. Like and subscribe so you don't miss the next stories that might touch your heart and change your perspective. It's time to take action.